Good evening. This is a short practice to help you come down from your day. It's a good practice to do maybe when you first come home from work, if you want to just release your day and prepare yourself for the evening ahead. Or you might wait until after your evening meal, but you want to give it a couple of hours, let that meal digest before you do your yoga practice. And this is a great practice to do before bed to help you prepare for sleep. So however you decide that you want to do it, just make sure you haven't just eaten. We will do a couple of inversions. And of course, after we eat a meal, we want the food to go downward and not come back up. So props for this evening. A blanket can be really helpful. I recommend 2 blocks. If you don't have blocks, anything that's this size could be used. And we will end with our legs either up the wall, so you could use a wall space, or on a chair. I'm going to demo with a chair today because it's a little bit easier to see. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to start today in a child's pose, but before you get into it, move your props aside. Come to all fours. Take a look back and make sure that your toes are touching, your knees are wide apart. So we're going to do knees wide apart today, getting a nice hip stretch here. Start to sink your hips back towards your heels. If they don't come way back, if you really tighten the hips, remember you can always use a block or two here right away and maybe sink the hips back to that block and just sort of rest the hips there. Bring your forehead down and see if it'll touch the mat, or you could also stack your hands here. You can also take another block and place that under the forehead, especially if your hips are way up in the air, because we don't want the hips way up and the head down. We want to try and keep the head parallel with the hips here as much as possible. So start to sink in here. I'm not going to use my blocks. My hips come back pretty far. Spread the knees wide. I'm going to stack my hands so that you can hear me. I don't want to squash the microphone. So start to settle in. Feel all the points of contact between your body and the floor. In child's pose or balasana, we are actually practicing pratyahara, so turning our attention inward, withdrawing our senses, releasing our day. Begin to notice your breath. Feel the breath in the belly. Feel the breath in the ribs. Feel the breath in the upper back between the shoulder blades. And as you exhale, feel everything just soften and let go, releasing your day. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And exhale through your nose. Becoming completely aware of your breath in the present moment. With each exhale, notice if maybe the hips start to release a little bit. You might be able to spread the knees a little bit wider. So there's no forcing, there's just noticing, allowing. Anytime the mind begins to wander, bring it back to the breath. Begin to notice the body's holding patterns of tension and stress, if there is any. And we'll start to find a rhythm for the breath. So I'm going to count here, but if my counting doesn't work for you, simply find your own rhythm of breath. So maybe we start with an inhale of 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now see if you can make that exhale a little bit longer than the inhale. Inhaling 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhaling 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Keep going. Inhaling 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Continue at your own pace. And see if you can start to lengthen that exhale to a 6 or a 7 or even an 8 count. Begin to notice what's happening with the hips, the inner groin, lower back. Take one more breath here. Sense of releasing and letting go. At the end of your exhale, maybe even begin to take your forehead a little side to side, letting it just feel that sensation of groundedness on the mat or on the block. And then walk those hands back under the shoulders and start to lift yourself gently up, coming into your table pose. So go ahead and bring those knees hip width apart and come into a couple of simple cat-cows or whatever movement might feel needed here for you. So I'm going to release a little more tension around the spine. Maybe you want to take your hips side to side, wagging the tail and looking back over your shoulders. But just releasing tension here around the spine. Inhaling and exhaling. It's just a little bit before we transition into our next posture, a little bit of movement. And then we're going to come back down onto our forearms with the elbows shoulder width apart. Go ahead and interlace your hands. Root down a little bit into the forearms, so feel the muscles of your arms engaged. Go ahead, tuck your toes and start to lift your hips up. Maybe you have bent knees at first. And then slowly start to straighten, come up onto the balls of your feet. And as you exhale, start to sink your heels back towards the floor. And they most likely won't touch in this dolphin pose as we stretch the backs of the legs. Maybe your head touches the floor, but don't sink into the head and the neck. Keep pressing in through your forearms. Keep lifting your hips high and exhaling and relaxing the backs of the legs. Relax your neck. Relax your jaw here if you can. If you need to bring the knees down, you can, but if you're okay with it, stay for another breath or two. And on your next exhale, slowly start to bring those knees back down, sink your hips back to child's pose. Bring your hands to prayer now and bring the hands behind your head. Maybe walking your elbows forward a little bit more and get that little release in the upper back now and the triceps and breathe. Feel the stretch along the side body here. We'll take one more breath. And releasing your hands down, start to come back to all fours. Tuck your toes, lift your hips up, downward facing dog. So hugging those triceps back and apart. Lift the hips, sink the heels. And then slowly start to walk your hands to your feet or your feet to your hands. We're going to come into Uttanasana. Grab those blocks if you have them and inhale, lift halfway. Find that L-shaped pose, Ardha Uttanasana. Blocks can be on any level. Inhale and lengthen through your spine. And as you exhale, go ahead and fold. Bend your knees as deeply as you need to. Maybe shake your head. No. Inhale, lift halfway again, moving with the breath. And exhale and fold. And do that a couple more times. Inhale, lengthen. You could also do this with your hands at the wall if you want. Just feeling that deep stretch in the backs of the legs. And exhale and fold. Last one. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Let everything hang here. If you want, you can really drape your upper body over the lower body. Grabbing elbows, maybe shaking your head. Deep breath in, sigh it out. Let go of the tension of your day. Let it release from the shoulders, the neck, the top of the head. And then gently bring those hands back to the blocks. So it can be really helpful to have the blocks here. You're going to walk the hands forward a little bit, as if we were going to walk back forward into a downward facing dog, but not quite that far. And then we're going to just root down through the left foot and lift the right leg up and back. And breathe here. Exhale, press through that right leg. Imagine pressing that right foot on a wall. And then come up onto the ball of the left foot if you can. Reach the right leg a little higher. Bring your head down a little bit lower. Maybe walk your hands towards your foot. Bring that heel back down for balance. Inhale, lift halfway again. Keep your leg back. Exhale, coming towards standing split. So bringing the head towards the knee. For some of you, you might just come back down where you were. Okay, so be where you need to be. And then touch that right foot back behind you. I'm taking a little bend into the front knee. I'm going to walk my hands back. And then I'm going to bring my right knee down. I'm going to start to sit back and bring my left leg across. So a little fancy move there. If you didn't quite get that, go ahead and come to seated. You're just going to take your right heel towards your left glute and step the left foot across. We're going to come into Ardha Matsyendrasana. And I'm going to turn this way so you can see me. So, left foot on the floor. Wrap that right arm around the left knee. Take your left hand behind you. Sit up nice and tall. Breathe in and exhale. Drawing the belly towards the spine. Taking that twist to the left side. Stay here for a few more breaths. If you like, you can inhale the right arm up and exhale. If you can bring that elbow outside the knee, you can take this version of the posture, maybe even turning the head forward and placing your right thumb to the center of the forehead, closing the eyes and allowing your head to rest. Three breaths here. Notice if the mind begins to quiet. And then release the posture and start to take your hands to the other side. So taking that counter twist. We're going to come out of this and back to downward facing dog. So that's where we're headed. I'm going to take my hands down and I'm going to start to pivot. As I start to lift my hips up, I'm going to come to my feet and pivot and come back into downward facing dog. Now I'm going to turn the other way so I don't have my butt to the camera.
If you didn't quite get what I did, no worries. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just come back to downward facing dog. And then walk your hands to your feet or your feet to your hands. Find your forward fold. Inhale and lift halfway. And exhale and fold, Uttanasana. When you're ready, inhale, lift halfway again. Find those blocks. I'm going to step forward. You may not need to. I'm just moving around the mat so you can see. And from here, wrists under shoulders. We'll start to take that left leg up and back. Breathe here. Feel this deep stretch in the back of your right leg. Keep pressing that left foot as if you were standing on a wall with that back leg. And then go ahead and lift the right heel if you can. Come up onto the ball of your foot. Maybe lift the left leg higher. Feel that in the glute, the back of the leg. Exhale, bring the heel down. Inhale, lengthen through your spine, and exhale, maybe you can come a little bit closer towards that knee and towards a standing split. Now this is my tight side, so I'm not as flexible here. I've had an old injury here. You may notice one side different than the other. Breathe. And then as you exhale, start to bend that knee, step that foot back. What I'm going to do is draw that back knee right next to my right foot. Sink my hips down. Did you see that? I came right into Ardha Matsyendrasana. So it's kind of fun. Play with that. Don't get discouraged if it didn't happen the first time. It's a fun little thing I learned from another teacher. So fun little transition. If you didn't quite make it, you can just come to seated. Bend the left knee, left heel to the left glute. Crossing the right foot over. Sitting up nice and tall here. And we're going to start to twist to the right this time. So you can simply keep the left hand encouraging that knee into the midline, right hand behind you for stability. Sit up nice and tall and exhale and take that twist. And take several breaths here. If you're able to inhale that left arm up and reach across and get that elbow outside the knee, you can take this version as well. And then gently take the forehead to the thumb. Nice calming, grounding release here. Two more breaths. And release. Go ahead and release your legs. You can take your legs as wide as the mat and just allow your knees to go a little bit side to side if you like. Okay, two more postures left. So we're going to end here with straight legs, seated in Dandasana. Now here's where it might be helpful to have a blanket roll. Rolling your blanket up here. I'm going to use it in just a second, but first let's make sure that we're in staff pose, Dandasana. Press down through your thighs, your shins, your feet are flexed. You can lift the flesh out from under you so that your sits bones are firmly planted. And then notice if you tend to round into your lower spine, we don't want to do that. So if you do, you might want to sit up on a folded blanket just to give you a little bit of lift. So find all of that. And then inhale your arms up to the sky, reach through those hands. And exhale and start to reach forward. And maybe you want to just take a couple little reaches here. Reach, reach, reach. Notice any sensation in your lower back. If it doesn't feel good, you might want to sit up on that blanket. And then just bring the hands down to your shins, your thighs. Before we come into forward fold, we're going to go ahead and bend those knees. And I'm going to show you this from the side. So it's kind of a fun way to come into it, especially if you are still tight in those hamstrings. I'm going to get my blanket so that it's going to eventually be under my knees. So find where that is. And then start to bend your legs, sitting up nice and tall. See if you can bring your belly to your thighs. So we're keeping
belly close to the thighs, maybe grab your toes. Sit up nice and tall. As you exhale, start to slide those feet forward a little bit. Drape yourself over your legs. Stretching in the lower back. Any discomfort or pain in the lower back, you can come back up. And then slowly start to walk those feet a little bit more forward. See if you can keep your belly on your thighs. It's okay if the knees stay bent. Slowly, slowly, we come into this version of Paschimottanasana. Inhale to come up. I'm going to move this a little bit more under my knees so that I can now press my knees into the blanket. I'm going to sit up nice and tall. Inhale here, and then exhale. Come forward one more time. You could take a strap here around your feet, or inhale, reach up once again, and exhale, hinge forward. Some of you might be able to touch your feet, your shins, or just hands to the floor. Go ahead and take your version of forward fold. Each exhale, maybe you find a little bit more space here. Don't overdo. Be present with the sensations in your lower back, along the side body. You could even take a block and hold it, and again, allow your forehead to rest on your block. Inhale when you're ready, come all the way back up. We're just going to come into our legs up the wall, our legs on the chair. So legs up the wall, if you know how to do that. I'm not going to show that version tonight. I'm going to use my chair, and the metal chair is a little cold, so I have a blanket here on it. If you have a sofa at home, you could use that as well. I'm going to sit pretty close to my chair. Take one leg up and then the other with my knees bent. Scoot my butt a little closer. And then you could place another blanket under your head as a pillow. You could cover with a blanket. Another thing I really like to do is wrap my feet so they're not cold. So you could do that as well. For today, I'm just going to rest here. So go ahead and make sure that the back of your head is supported. Make sure you're completely comfortable. The legs higher than the heart. Again, if you're doing legs up the wall, you'd have your legs against the wall and your butt would be right up against it, so no space between the butt and the wall. And that would be, of course, another nice stretch for the backs of the legs. Just releasing and letting that tension go from the body. Letting the feet rest. You can place your hands on your belly or out to the sides. Bring your awareness back to your breath. Notice the length of your exhale and see if it's longer than your inhale. If your mind tends to wander, you can bring it back to counting the breath. And that can be an anchor.
for your focus. Inhaling, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhaling, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Couple more breaths on your own. And then gently start to draw your feet into your chest. Rock a little side to side. The stretch in your lower back. You can circle those knees if you like. You might have to push that chair away a little bit. Give yourself some space to circle. And then we're just going to come to final rest. So you might want to roll to your side, walk yourself up, and then prepare yourself for rest. Maybe if you're going to bed, you might want to go ahead and get right cozy in your bed. Or you could prop up the legs, cover yourself with a blanket. This time really make sure that your feet are nice and tucked, right? And have that other blanket available as a pillow for your head. Go ahead and sit back. Allow the knees to rest open. And find your pose of comfort, your posture of rest. Once you're settled, again, feel all the points of contact between your body and the floor. With each inhale, feel your body fill with breath. With each exhale, feel the body sink and let go of tension. A slow release of discomfort in the body or tightness or tension. Each exhale, each breath. And I'm going to invite you to stay here as long as you like. Preparing yourself for sleep. If you're practicing earlier in the day and you need to prepare yourself for your evening meal or for whatever your plans are, when you feel ready, you could simply start to draw your knees in or roll to your side. And take a minute to pause there. And you feel completely grounded and ready. You can slowly start to come all the way back to seated.
If you have a meditation practice, this could be a great place to move on to your meditation practice, placing the right hand on top of the left, relaxing your hands in your lap, and sitting in seated meditation. I'm going to go ahead and end the practice so you can end it the way that feels right for you. Namaste.